"You can send me back," the mail-order bride asked. The cowboy answered, "My son already chose you." The train slowed with a long, aching groan, as though it understood the weight of what it carried. Clara Whitmore stood near the open door of the final carriage, her fingers wrapped tightly around the handle of a small leather suitcase. Everything she owned was inside it. Everything she had left behind was already too far away to return to. As the train came to a halt, dust rose from the wooden platform, drifting through the hot air of the frontier town. Clara stepped down slowly, her boots touching unfamiliar ground. The sun was harsher here than back home, brighter and less forgiving, as if it demanded honesty from anyone who dared stand beneath it. This was it. She had answered an advertisement printed in careful ink, widowed rancher seeking wife. Honest work. Quiet life. It had sounded simple. Safer than the life she was running from. After losing her parents to illness and her home to debt, Clara had learned that hope did not arrive loudly. Sometimes it came folded inside a letter. A few men stood nearby, pretending not to stare while doing exactly that. And then she saw him. The cowboy stood apart from the others, tall and still, dressed in worn denim and sun-faded leather. A wide-brimmed hat shaded his face, but she could see enough to know he was not a man given to unnecessary words. In his arms, he held a small blond boy, no more than 4 years old, whose laughter rang clear and fearless in the dusty air. That laughter startled her. She hadn't heard such a sound in years. Clara felt suddenly small. She hesitated, then forced herself to walk toward them. Each step felt heavier than the last. She stopped a few feet away, smoothed her dress with trembling hands, and lifted her gaze. "I'm Clara Whitmore," she said softly, though she suspected he already knew. The cowboy nodded once. "Matthew Hayes." Silence followed, thick and uncomfortable. The townsmen watched closely now. Clara could feel their thoughts pressing in. Is she pretty enough? Is she strong enough? Will she stay? Her chest tightened. Before fear could rob her of her voice, she spoke. "You can send me back," the mail-order bride asked, her words careful but aching. "If I'm not what you expected. If this was a mistake. I understand." Matthew's jaw tightened. He had buried one wife already. He had sworn never to gamble with his son's heart again. He looked at Clara's thin frame, her tired eyes, the quiet courage standing upright in front of him, and uncertainty stirred. Then the boy in his arms shifted. Eli had been watching Clara closely, his small face serious in a way only children could manage. Suddenly, he leaned forward and stretched out his arms toward her. "Pa," he said brightly, pointing. "That's her." Matthew blinked. "Eli, you don't know." But Eli wriggled free, sliding down to the ground. He walked straight to Clara and took her hand as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "She's kind," Eli said with certainty. "I can tell." Clara's breath caught. She hadn't spoken another word, yet this child had seen something no one else had bothered to look for. Matthew stared at his son, then at Clara. Something inside him, something long locked away, shifted. "My son already chose you," he said quietly. Clara felt tears sting her eyes. She nodded, afraid to speak, afraid to hope. Life on the ranch was nothing like the picture she had imagined. It was harder. Lonelier. More honest. Clara woke before sunrise, learned to cook with limited supplies, and mended clothes until her fingers ached. She learned how silence could speak volumes and how grief lived in the corners of a house. Matthew was kind but distant. He treated her with respect, never with expectation. His late wife's presence lingered in the photographs on the wall and in the careful way he avoided speaking her name. Eli, however, had no such restraint. He followed Clara everywhere. Asking questions, sharing stories, dragging her outside to show her frogs by the creek or a crooked tree he believed was magical. At night, when thunder shook the windows, he would appear in her doorway, clutching his blanket. Clara always opened her arms. He always fit perfectly there. Slowly, the house began to change. Laughter returned. Meals lasted longer. Light crept back into Matthew's eyes, though he tried to hide it. The town noticed too, and not all of them approved. Mail-order brides don't last, Clara overheard one afternoon. She'll leave once things get hard, another said. They always do. The word settled deep in her heart, feeding her oldest fear. That night, Clara packed her suitcase. She folded her clothes neatly, her hands steady despite the storm inside her. She left a note on the table, thanking Matthew for his honesty and apologizing for not being strong enough to stay. As she reached for the door, a small voice stopped her. Please don't go. Eli stood there, barefoot and trembling. He crossed the room and hugged her tightly. If you leave, he whispered, the house gets lonely again. Clara knelt, tears spilling freely now. Sometimes people leave because they think they don't belong. Eli shook his head fiercely. You belong with us. The floor creaked behind them. Matthew had seen the suitcase. Had read the note. I was afraid, he admitted quietly. Afraid you'd feel trapped. Afraid I'd ask too much. Afraid my son would lose someone else. Clara looked up at him. I was afraid no one would miss me. Matthew swallowed hard. We would. We already do. He knelt beside them and placed his hand over Eli's. If you stay, he said gently, it won't be because you owe us anything. It'll be because you're wanted. Clara nodded through tears. That night, she unpacked her suitcase. Seasons passed. The ranch bloomed with warmth. Clara grew stronger, not just in body, but in spirit. Matthew learned that love did not replace what was lost, it honored it. Eli grew surrounded by two people who chose him every day. One evening, as the sun painted the land gold, Clara watched Eli run toward her, laughter filling the air. Matthew stood beside her, steady and sure. She realized then that compassion changes lives not through grand gestures, but through small, brave choices, to stay, to care, to believe. She had once said, you can send me back. But the answer that changed everything had been simple. My son already chose you. And in that choice, 3 broken hearts found a home.